In this video, we're going to talk about upgrading from CloudBees Jenkins platform to CloudBees CI, but using the new users that are available through the installation process instead of relying on the users that existed with CJP. So here's our starting point. I've got an operations center and a controller. They're both at 2.346.4.1. So when I do my upgrade from CJP, CloudBees Jenkins platform, to CloudBees CI, with the CloudBees CI, we're also going to be doing the same version, 2.346.4.1. Let's take a look at the documentation that we're going to be following through for this video. The link for this documentation is down in the description, and what we're looking at is option A, migrating the new default user account and new Jenkins home directory. So we're going to be taking everything that already exists for our operations center and for our client controller and moving it over to use the new directories and the new users. So we're going to start with our operations center first, and then we'll do our client controller. Now, the very first thing that you should do always is back up your Jenkins home directory. Now, in the case of CloudBees Jenkins platform, that's going to be by default var-lib jenkins-oc for the operations center and var-lib jenkins for the controller. Now, I'm going to make the assumption that you're going to back that up yourself. I'll remind us once again about that once we get over to the controller, but I'm not going to worry about doing a backup for mine. You be sure to do a backup for yours. So if we take a look at the documentation here, we'll just take a quick glance through it. We're going to stop and disable the Jenkins OC service for the Operations Center. And then we're going to install the specific version of the Operations Center for CloudBees CI. Then we're going to stop the new Operations Center because we need to make sure that we've migrated everything over. That includes the Jenkins home directory. That includes any configurations that we might have had inside of our sysconfig file. And then finally, we'll go ahead and start up the process once again, once we have everything back in place. So let's go ahead and get started on the Operations Center. So I'm going to go into my shell, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say systemctl stop jenkins-oc. If I was to go back into here and click on dashboard, I can see that my Operations Center is down. If I want to go ahead and verify it another way, I can say ps aux ww. I'm going to grep for Java, and we don't have any Java processes running, so I know my Operations Center is down. The other thing I want to go ahead and do, in case we do a restart for any reason, I don't want this jenkins-oc process to start again based on just a restart of the box. So I'm going to explicitly say disable jenkins-oc. So now, if for any reason the box gets restarted, this process will not automatically restart. Now, next up, we need to install the specific version of the Operations Center that we need to have in order for this migration to occur correctly. So if we take a look at the documentation, again, the link for this is down in the description as well. I'm currently running on Alma Linux, which is a Fedora-based distribution. So I'm following these instructions for Red Hat, CentOS, Fedora, or Amazon Linux 2. So I've made sure that I have all the hardware and software that I need. I've got the JVM requirements for what I need. So I'm going to add a package manager repository. I am going to add the key for this repository, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the install of CloudBees Core OC, but I'm going to be specifying a version that matches exactly what I had with Jenkins-oc. So following these instructions, I am going to go ahead and copy this repository link. I'll paste that in. Next up, I'm going to copy the key. Next up, it says to make sure you do an update. I'm not going to worry about the update right now for me. I'm going to go ahead and go down to my DNF install for CloudBees Core OC, but I need to remember to use the specific version that I want. In this case, it's 2.346.4.1. So let's go back over to the shell, and I'm pasting in DNF install CloudBees Core OC 2.346.4.1. That way I get that specific version to match the exact same version I was running of the CloudBees Jenkins platform Operations Center. So now if we take a look at this, we see that is the version that I want to install. Let's go ahead and enter yes. And now that it's completed, let's verify and make sure it's running, which it should be. We'll grep for Java. We can see the process is running. We actually want to go ahead and stop that. So going back over to our migration, so far we've done step 1. Step 2, we did the installation. And now we need to stop CloudBees Core OC. So I'll say systemctl stop CloudBees Core OC. Let's verify that it's actually down, and it is. And then what we're going to be doing in step 4, from our old CloudBees Jenkins Platform Operations Center installation, we're going to copy the Jenkins home directory and put it in a new name that's called CloudBees Core OC. These are the directions here. So we'll cd into var-lib. We'll move everything out of Jenkins OC into CloudBees Core OC, and then we're going to change the ownership of everything within CloudBees Core OC. So let's go back over into our shell. one of the first things I want to do, because I'm doing a copy, is I want to make sure I have enough disk space to be able to make this copy. So if I was to run a du-sh on var lib Jenkins OC, that's going to tell me how much disk space is being used for this directory. In my case, it's 181 meg. If I do a dfh, I can see for my main directory, I've got 15 gig free, so making a copy of 181 meg isn't going to be a big deal. So I'm first going to check and see what size my Operations Center directory is for Jenkins-OC, and then I'm going to determine whether or not I have enough actual disk space to make a copy of that. If I don't have enough disk space, I need to stop and figure out, okay, what am I going to do and where am I going to put those files, because I would still need a backup. Remember, first step, always backup. So since I have enough space, I'm going to go ahead and cd into var lib and follow the instructions here. I'm going to go ahead and do a copy. And since I'm already root, I'm not going to worry about the sudo for this. I'm going to copy -rf, so everything, Jenkins-OC, CloudBees core OC. Now notice that it's asking, do I want to overwrite? Well, I'm actually going to quit out of this. Because I'm running on Alma Linux and other Fedora-based systems may be the same, since I'm root, I'm going to check my bash rc. And what you're going to see here is anytime I run copy, it's asking for a -i, which means interactive. I'm actually going to go ahead and comment this line out. I'm going to exit out of root and go back in as root. We'll cd back over to var lib. And then here, let's run our copy one more time. I no longer have the -i on there. And now all the files that are in Jenkins-OC are going to be put over into, or copied into, not moved, but copied into CloudBees core OC. Now, if we were to take a look at the directory structure here, what we're going to see is we've got our CloudBees core OC directory that's owned by CloudBees core OC. We see our Jenkins OC directory. Let's go into CloudBees core OC. If we take a look at this directory now, we can see that many of these files, because we copied them over, are owned by root. And that's no good. Everything needs to be owned by CloudBees core OC. So I'm actually going to go up a level and diverge a little bit from what the directions say here. And right now I'm in my var lib directory. I'm going to go ahead and chown with the user CloudBees core OC, the group CloudBees core OC on the CloudBees core OC directory. So instead of being inside of the directory as the directions say, I'm just staying up a level and I'm just going to completely own the CloudBees core OC directory and not just dot. So let's go ahead and do that. If I was to cd back into CloudBees core OC, and now just take a look at the files in the directory, we can see everything is owned by CloudBees core OC. So that's exactly what we wanted to see. Now next up, we need to migrate all of our settings for sysconfig. That means we need to diff our etc sysconfig Jenkins OC against our sysconfig for CloudBees core OC. So I'm doing a diff between those two sysconfigs, and then I'm grepping out anywhere I don't see a hash mark. Because if I didn't leave out the grep-v for the hash, then what you're going to see is a lot more noise here that I really don't need to see. Like, these are just comments. I don't need to worry about those. Now, should I check it? Yes. But as my starting point, I want to grep without finding just the single hashes. Now, at this point, I can see that Jenkins args needs to be moved from my Jenkins OC sysconfig over into the CloudBees core OC. If we scroll up, I have Jenkins Java options that need to be moved over. Now for Jenkins user, I don't need to do anything because I am using this new user. So I'm not going to make a change for Jenkins user. I'm taking a look at Jenkins home. Again, I've moved all of the files into var lib CloudBees core OC, so I can ignore Jenkins home changes. And then that's it. So I'm ignoring Jenkins home. I'm ignoring Jenkins user. I know I've got to move over my Jenkins Java options. And then finally, I need to bring in my Jenkins args. So let's go ahead and edit my sysconfig for CloudBees core OC. Let's look for Java options, and let's go ahead and delete this, and let's paste in what I had from the previous one. Now, I'll make a note of one thing. Because I am specifying a temp dir in varcache CloudBees core OC temp, previously that value was varcache Jenkins OC. So I've got to remember to create that temp directory inside of varcache CloudBees core OC. Everything else is fine and translates directly from Jenkins OC to CloudBees core OC. If we go to the bottom of the file, our Jenkins args, this again is very similar to what we see with Jenkins OC. However, in this case, in varcache CloudBees core OC, I don't need to create this plugins directory because when the process starts up, it'll actually create that directory for me. So going back to the Java options, I need to make sure that I create the temp directory because the process isn't going to know how to create that temp directory. So I need to do that manually and set the permissions on it. But for this plugins one, the process will know how to create that for me. So let's go ahead and save this. Let's go ahead and create the temp dir. So this is var cache CloudBees core OC temp. Let's go ahead and change the ownership for var cache CloudBees core OC. Again, much like what we did with var lib CloudBees core OC, we're doing the same thing for var cache. And then finally, let's go ahead and start the process. And the other thing I want to do now is if I need to restart the machine, I want this process to automatically start up. So we'll say systemctl enable CloudBees core OC. And then finally, let's see if the log file is starting to fill up or not. So we'll say CloudBees core OC, CloudBees core OC. And we can see that the log is starting. And we now see the bottom line here, Jenkins is fully up and running. Let's verify that. So we'll quit out of the log. Let's go back over to our browser. Let's refresh our Operations Center. The login screen still looks the same, but when we log in this time, what we see now is CloudBees CI up in the upper left-hand corner of the banner. And if we look down in the footer, we'll also see CloudBees CI Operations Center. Now note, we're still at the same version because I installed that specific version of the Operations Center. Now, if we go ahead and take a look at our controller now is still running the CloudBees Jenkins platform version, which we can still see by taking a look at both the header and the footer. So the header is still showing CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise. That's indicative of CloudBees Jenkins Platform. And we also just see CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise down in the footer. So now we're ready at this point to go ahead and upgrade our controller. Now, all of the steps are very similar that we just did with the Operations Center, but in this case, we just need to specify the things that are specific to the controller. Again, first step, make sure you back up your Jenkins home directory. Let's go into our controller. Let's stop our Jenkins process because with the controller, it's Jenkins, not Jenkins-OC. We'll also do the same with systemctl disable Jenkins. If we were to refresh now our controller, we can see that it's down. Much like what we had with the Operations Center, we need to migrate our controller from the CloudBees Jenkins platform to CloudBees CI. There is another section that goes into this for the controller. So if we look at the documentation for this, very similar, we're stopping, disabling. We'll do the installation, we'll stop it, we'll move the files from the current Jenkins home to the new Jenkins home. We'll diff our sysconfigs in this case, and then we'll start it up. Now, the one thing that we didn't do for the Operations Center that optionally you probably should do is uninstall the existing bits that were there for the Operations Center. In my case, you would have done a DNF remove Jenkins-OC. On the controller, I would do a DNF remove Jenkins. But in this case, I'm not going to do it. So we've done step one so far. We've stopped and disabled. We're ready to do the installation for the controller. We'll go ahead and go over into this documentation. I'll click again on Fedora because that's the base that I'm using. Now you'll notice that an EPEL release package may be required. So in your case, if you haven't installed that, when you go to actually do the installation of CloudBees Core CM, it will complain during the installation process. Again, everything's fairly similar. Make sure you have hardware and software requirements set up. You've got your JVM requirements. I already have those. Let's go ahead and copy in the package repository that I need, and let's paste that in. Next, I need my key for that repository. So I'll copy that, paste that in. And now I'm ready to go ahead and do my installation. So DNF install CloudBees Core CM. Again, the specific version, don't forget the version, 2.346.4.1. We can see here that's the version that I want. Now that it's installed, let's go ahead and make sure that it's running. And if it is, we want to go ahead and stop it. We can see it's running. So let's go ahead and say systemctl stop CloudBees Core CM. We'll go ahead and double check that one more time. We can see that it's not running. So now we're ready to go ahead and move on to the next step in the migration. Now we want to copy all of our files from our old Jenkins home, which was var lib Jenkins. And now we want to copy them into our new location, which is var lib CloudBees Core CM. So let's go ahead and CD into var lib. Now during the Operations Center, we checked for sizing. So actually while we're here, let's go ahead and test that out. So let's do a du-sh var lib Jenkins. We can see that that old controller was using 319 meg. If I was to do the same DFH on this machine, I can see that I have roughly 14 gig available. So making a copy of 319 meg, not a big deal. So we're inside of var lib. Let's go ahead and copy everything over from our Jenkins directory into CloudBees Core CM. Now, again, I'm diverging a little bit from the documentation. I'm just gonna go ahead and change the ownership while I'm setting here right above both of these directories. So I'm going to say clone-r, CloudBees Core CM for the user. The group is also CloudBees Core CM, and the directory is CloudBees Core CM. So we'll go ahead and hit enter, and now all the ownership is set up correctly. Okay, at this point, we've moved all of our files from the old location to the new location. Going back to our documentation, we've completed step 4. Now if we go to step 5, we need to migrate our service options from the old, in our case, sysconfig into the new sysconfig. So we're going to be doing our diff, but I'm also adding in a grep to hide some of the extra noise that comes along with that diff. So we go ahead and go back into our shell. Let's do our diff. Notice we're adding in that grep-v with the hash. And much like what we had before, at least in my scenario, the only two places I have to really make changes are in Jenkins args, to where we're going to be moving varcache Jenkins, and that will be changing to varcache CloudBees Core CM. And also in our Jenkins Java options, I still have a tempter here, but notice it's Jenkins, I'll be changing that to also CloudBees Core CM. We don't need to make changes to the Jenkins user because we're using the new user. And finally, for Jenkins home, we're using the new location for the home. So the only two values that I need to update are my Jenkins Java options and my Jenkins args. So let's go ahead and edit sysconfig CloudBees Core CM. Let's look for Java options. Let's go ahead and delete that. Let's paste in the change that we have here. And notice that my tempter is set to varcache CloudBees Core CM. I'll have to remember to create that tempter because, again, remember that won't get automatically created for us. Let's go down to the bottom. For Jenkins args, I'm going to add in my plugin root. And notice here as well, my location, instead of being varcache Jenkins, is now varcache CloudBees Core CM. Let's go ahead and save this. Let's create the tempter that I needed to create in varcache. Since I'm root, the ownership on that directory is going to be incorrect, so I need to go ahead and set varcache CloudBees Core CM, set the permissions on that to CloudBees Core CM user and group again. And then let's go ahead and say systemctl start CloudBees Core CM. Let's go ahead and enable that process as well in case we need to restart the machine. And let's take a quick look at our log file. So CloudBees Core CM log. And we can see now that the process is actually starting up, and we're waiting for that to complete to where we see Jenkins is up and running. Now we can see that Jenkins is fully up and running right here. So let's go ahead and go back over into our browser. We're on the page for our controller. If we refresh this, we'll see now client controller is in the header. We see CloudBees CI. Then also we see CloudBees CI in the footer. If we go ahead and click back up to our Operations Center in the breadcrumb, now what we'll see is we've got CloudBees CI for the Operations Center. If we click down into our controller, we also see CloudBees CI here. So now we've successfully migrated from CloudBees Jenkins platform over to CloudBees CI. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to us on Twitter at CloudBees. If this video was helpful to you, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to CloudBees TV yet, why not? Take a moment, click on that subscribe button, and then ring that bell, and you'll be notified anytime there's new content available on CloudBees TV. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.